Bible can work itself out with when you look at it topically, based on topics. The first topic, New Testament. I shouldn't say Bible. Let me correct that. I'm talking about the New Testament. The New Testament. I explained the Old Testament through journeys. Okay? Let me start over. What we did before the break was communicate the Bible through journeys in the Old Testament. Old Testament, here are the journeys. In the New Testament, we could explain it through topics. Are you with me? We could explain it through topics. Now, what are these topics? Old Testament, journeys. New Testament, topics. The first topic is going to be when Jesus Christ came, he came to what? His own. And his own did not receive him. When he comes in Acts chapter 1 verse 8, he says, go ye into all the world, but start out in Judea, right? Pentecost took place, thousands of people joining church. Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the world. By the time you get to Acts and the end of Acts, guess where they are? In the uttermost parts of the world. Matter of fact, you go to Romans, they're in the uttermost parts of the world. Okay? So when you start this journey with them, you can see that. So Jesus Christ, when he comes in Matthew, seeing this topically, he speaks to convince the Jews that he's king. So Matthew is seeking to prove that Jesus is the king. Forget this right here. I got carried away. Jesus, not just a king, he's a servant. Mark. So before, as when they're setting up the Bible for us to follow, Jesus Christ is a king, but he's also a servant. So when you're reading the book of Mark, you see a lot of kicking out of demons and serving people and all this other stuff because he's trying to define Jesus as a servant. So he is a king, but he came to serve. Luke is saying, but he needs, when he's serving, he needs to serve people that are saved. So he came to seek and to save those who are lost. Luke. So it's topical, okay? Then you go to John. John says he was a man, fully man, but he's the Son of God. Why is that huge? Because Jews knows the minute you start saying Son of God, you're making the person God. So he's trying to establish that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. So watch the development. He's a king, but he serves. Not only does he serve, he wants to serve even the lost. And when he serves the lost, he wants to come from being the Son of Man, meaning he wants to serve them from where they are to where they need to go. So Jesus Christ came. Watch the transition is again. In John, what you have is this Jesus Christ who came to save the what? World. Well, when you save the world, they need to go to church. So you have the epistles. See, it's also organized topically. So if you want to remember the Bible, you could follow it topically and you're able to remember. The same thing it is in the Old Testament. Remember the journeys and you remember the books. Okay? They went from Canaan to Egypt. Right? Patriarch period. They left Egypt, so we still in Pentecost, still in the Pentateuch and exited. Well, when you exit, guess where you exit into? The wilderness. Well, what does he want you to do? Worship him, Leviticus. But you, instead of staying focused, worshiping him, you decide to not listen to him, so your numbers all throughout. He finally gets you to listen again because it's a whole new generation, so Deuteronomy. Now that you listen, we need to go into the promised land, Joshua. Now you got into the promised land. Do you really listen to God anymore? No, so you got Judges. You see what I'm saying? So you could remember the Bible by remembering the story. Okay? So now they're in the promised land, not listening and not doing what they were supposed to do. Guess what happens? They group Esther in there, but Esther's a little bit later. You got Ruth. Where's Ruth? Ruth is showing you that you went into the promised land, but you hooked up with Moabites. So now you're here with Moabites. God used that to be the kinsman redeemer. So the stories can help you to remember the books. Okay, so when you come to the New Testament, you're now in the church. If you're in the church, guess what you're waiting for? His return. Thessalonians. Are you with me? Y'all with me, right? Thessalonians, his return. But his return means that he's a supreme God, Lord, King, Redeemer. Hebrews. Okay? Now you got Hebrews. You got to find strength and weakness waiting for his return, James. But guess what? He does return, Revelation. Okay? So you could remember the Bible by thinking of the journeys, and you could remember the New Testament by thinking of what he was trying to communicate in the topics. They're trying to help us get the message. Are you with me? I messed up again. I said when we come back from break, you could ask questions. Now, tomorrow you could ask any question you want. Today, I want to make sure we're accomplishing bibliology. So you could ask questions about any of these things we've been doing all morning, just starting off the afternoon. But I didn't do it again. So if you got questions, here we go. Let's do this. Here we go. And we're going to look at the New Testament theological system that I couldn't write down for you in time. Okay? I want to put, so this is the kind of things I left out that I regret. So, any questions? Any questions? Any questions? No questions? All right, we'll keep going. Now, here is something I want to just bring into you since we're in the New Testament. There are 3 groups of people that we keep hearing about. Technically, there are 4. There are 4 groups of people that we keep hearing about that affects the message of the New Testament, that affects the message of the New Testament. What is the first group of people? Well, thank you. What is the first group of people is the Pharisees. Okay, actually, there's more than that group. We all know. The reason I'm not mentioning these others is because I'm assuming that's part of it. You know about the high priests, right? The Levites, right? They're in there. Rabbis. So let me just not assume, because I said I don't assume. I'm not talking down to you. I just don't know where you are, so I'm not going to assume. Okay, so we have high priests. We have Levites that serve under them. We got rabbis that teach in the outer courts. Okay? So you have these groups. You got the Nazarites. So you have these different groups that are part of the system that God established. Right? Samson, all that. So you have these different people in the system, but the people decided to go get some more groups. It's kind of like churches who get trustees, and the Bible don't say nothing about trustees. Doesn't say it. But some churches will get trustees. Bad mistake. Okay? All right? So here are the groups outside of the Levitical system. Here are the groups that they created that influences the message. So you have to understand what they represent as to why Christ talks to them the way he does. Okay? Pharisees. Pharisees did these 3 things. 1, they wanted to protect the Jews against Hellenism. One thing. They wanted to protect the Jews against Hellenism. So they started out for a good reason. Okay? Hellenism. In order to protect the Jews, they added 300, second thing, to protect the Jews, they added 300 more laws to Moses' laws. 300 more laws. Let me give an example. How this affected the story in the New Testament. You remember the story about the woman with the mite, right? Woman with the mite that came to the temple and dropped her money in, and Christ says she gave more than anybody else. Remember that story? What's the big deal about this poor woman with the mite? You see, she was not accepted into the temple courts with everybody else because, number 1, she was poor. Pharisees set up royal laws. And number 2, she only had 1 mite. She's supposed to have 2. The Pharisees demanded that you bring 2. You can't bring 1. You got to bring 2. So that's why Jesus Christ could say after everybody gave, because she's coming like the Samaritan woman. You ever note that the Samaritan woman came to the well and she's the only person there? You ever ask yourself why? She's there and the only person is there is a Samaritan woman because she has 5 husbands. Ain't nobody want to talk to her. Christ, knowing that, go meet the woman that nobody wants to talk to, and that's why when she goes back to the village, she only brings men. Are you with me? So, so we have to, I want you to see how this affects the Bible. Let me give you an example about the Samaritan woman. Go back to the woman of Mite, so you get confused, okay? For instance, the Samaritan woman now is the effects of the northern kingdom. She is the mixture of the Syrians and Jews, Samaritans, okay? So where's that kingdom? Up north. So to get around from dealing with these Samaritans, they built a different road so that they don't have to deal with Samaritans. The problem was Jesus took the wrong road to deal with the Samaritan woman. That's why we know he wanted to deal with the Samaritan woman, because they built a road to not go past them, and he picked a road that goes smack to them. So we know right away that Jesus wants to bring this story to the Bible. So the Samaritan woman is on which mountain she says she's on? Jacob's mountain. Did she say that? Why? Because the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom are one nation called Israel. So since it's one nation called Israel, where they are has a Jacob mountain. Because they saw themselves as Jews. But why would Jesus, I want you to see how this affects the message, how the story affects the message. Why would Jesus tell her, you must worship me in spirit, small s, and truth? The reason why he would tell her that is because the Samaritans don't like the prophets, because the prophets speak against them. So what they did was they took out the prophets and only keep the Pentateuch. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. That's all they focus on. So what Jesus Christ is saying, when he goes down to Jerusalem, he finds people worshiping him like this. And they got the whole Bible. But when I come to Jacob's mountain, y'all are jumping around and singing and praising God and having a great time, but you don't have the whole Old Testament. So what I would like for you to do is, I would like to get y'all both together. I would like for them to bring all the truth, and I would like the excitement to join them. So I have spirit and I got truth. You see, the story explains the scripture. Are you with me? So if I don't know the story, I'm just saying, worship me in spirit and in truth. Why? It's up north. He's addressing racism, classism, by going to that woman. Because I came to my own, and my own did not receive me. So I'm sending you out to the Gentiles. So I don't want you here, Peter, James, John, and all of y'all, when I talk to this woman, so go get me something to eat. When they came back, did he eat it? No. He just didn't want their racism next to him. Because they hated the Samaritans, and he picked the wrong road. So understanding the story brings clarity to the message. Okay? So the woman with the mite, right? That's where I was. The woman with the mite is affected by this group we're talking about called Pharisees. They added 300 more laws, and to that law they said, you have to bring 2 mites. She only brought 1. So when everybody finished giving, Christ is careful to say that, then she shows up with her one mite. And Jesus Christ says, now that's the woman I want to talk about. Not the guys who are rich. And see, they had funnels, when you study this, they had funnels around the temple, and they were made of metal. So the reason why Jesus Christ know they gave a lot of money is because they brought coins, Roman coins, and they would drop the Roman coins in those funnels, and the treasury is at the bottom of the temple. So you hear bagalaga, 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 bagalaga. So if you bring a lot of coins and you hear lots of stuff, so you know they're giving a lot of money. But the woman with the mic, boom, 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 boom. She gave more than anybody else. You see, understanding how the Pharisees operated made the story about the mite more meaningful. That's what I'm saying. When we come to bibliology, you can't remove the story. Now, Hellenism, Pharisees. I said there was three things, right? They protected Hellenism, they added to the laws, and they became the strictest group of people holding people to Judaism. That's the third thing. They were just very strict. They were very strict about holding people to Judaism. Yes?
Explain Hellenism.
Explain it?
Talk more about Hellenism.
Okay. Hellenism is where the Greeks, who were the brains of this new movement under Rome's power, brought with them not just Greek, their culture. Kind of like how Europeans brought not just conquering nations, they brought their culture. They brought how we dress, how we talk. They don't want Kenyans to talk Swahili, because then you could be plotting against them. So they forced you to speak English. But then you dress like a European. So they brought their culture, they brought their Christianity here. So they brought their religions here. That's a form of control. Okay? So they brought with them whatever their nation was about and put it someplace else. Hellenism believed in gods. So you have all these mythologies about gods. So you got so many gods, I can't even name all of them. So you have all these temples attached to gods. You remember the story of Paul and the unknown God. The reason for that unknown God story is the fact that they worshiped so many gods and a plague came. And when that plague came, they were praying to all their unknown God, all their gods, and nothing changed. The plague got bigger. So they decided to they like to worship God. So they put this stone, this rock, saying, if we miss a God, here's this one. Well, by God's grace, setting up Paul, they prayed to this unknown God and sacrificed to the unknown God, and the plague went away. So when Paul showed up and said, let me tell you about the unknown God, tell us. God set that up. It's the same thing like Jonah going to Nineveh. Why would Jonah have a short message and in 3 days everybody changed? They worshiped the sun god. When they worshiped the sun god, before Jonah got there, God made the sun god, the sun start to disappear, put it in an eclipse. And they go, oh my God, God is mad at us, God is mad at us. Well, guess what happens? Jonah comes and says, God is mad at you. Okay, we change. So when we know the story, we understand the message. Are you with me? So that's what the Hellenistic is, where they come in: Greeks, language, culture, religion, gods. And because of Rome taking over Jerusalem, the Pharisees said, you ain't bringing that here. So we're going to produce 300 more laws to make sure our people do right. That's what they did. It's kind of like some people do with church. Same thing. We don't want women coming in here dressed crazy, so women can't wear pants. They got problems because they don't want, I got a church that I was consulting with. no women sits in the front row. I said, why? Because the pastor could be distracted by these women wearing short dresses. So we're going to put all our deacons up here. So when women walk in, they don't mean any harm. They're trying to just sit. They can't sit there. No. Ushers will tell them, no, sit there. Because they don't allow women in the front row. Because they don't want the pastor preaching and the women exposed. So they have another law. So we do similar things. Here's the next group that influenced this, the Sadducees. My dad used to say, we are sad, you see. That's what my dad would say. We are sad, you see. Sadducees are S-A-D-D-U-C-E-E-S. 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 The Sadducees had these two major things. They were the richer people. The Pharisees were actually the poorer group than the Sadducees. So they were like the aristocrats of the area of Judah, Jerusalem. The aristocrats. They were the people who were considered well-to-do. Folks that had some money. So as a result of that, they influenced the political structure because they had money. What does politicians want? Money. So they influenced the political structure of Judah, Sadducees. Okay? And they also argued that there's no resurrection. Okay? They did not believe in the resurrection of anybody. When you're dead, you're dead. There's no coming back. Okay? So that's why you had this argument between Pharisees and Sadducees. Okay? That's why Christ comes to Martha and said, Martha, I am the resurrection. What was Christ saying? Martha, I think you're on the Sadducee side. So let me teach you, I am the resurrection. Because apparently, Martha was influenced by the Sadducees being a family that got some money. So that's why he wanted to teach her about the resurrection. Here's the next group, Sanhedrin. These are the bad boys. This is the Supreme Court of the Jews. The Supreme Court of the Jews. It is made up of priests, elders, Pharisees, Sadducees, and scribes. Sadducees and scribes. This is the Supreme Court of the Jews. And it's made up of priests, elders, Sadducees, Pharisees, scribes. Scribes. Here's the only limitation they had. They could not produce capital punishment. They could not do capital punishment. And why am I making a point about them? Is because when Jesus went to the Sanhedrin, they couldn't kill him. Priests, Pharisees, Sadducees, scribes. Priests, Sadducees, Pharisees, and scribes made up the Sanhedrin. So why wouldn't Christ be, taken to the Sanhedrin and say, you're dead? Because the second thing is, they were not allowed to execute capital punishment. So they were forced to take Christ to the Romans, which fulfills the scriptures. So understanding that, you'd understand when he's standing there and they are coming against him, they could not kill him. They had to go somewhere else. You with me? There's one other group, but they're just the bad boys. I call them the thugs. The bad boys. You ever saw that? It's called zealots. The zealots say, we're not talking, we're not having conversations. You don't believe in us, we just kill you. We just cut you up. The zealots. The zealots were just guys, zeal for Judaism, and you either believe in us or you're dead. Zealots. So what I'm saying to that, why I'm saying that is that within the New Testament, these groups are influencing what people believe. So when you come to, like I said about Martha, why would he take 4 days to make a 2-day trip? 4 days. 4 days to take a 2-day trip. That's why there's a big argument in John 11. 4 days. Why? He said, he's just asleep. Come on, Jesus, you can't go there. They want to kill you. No, we're going. As soon as he arrives, he goes, Martha, let's talk about the resurrection. Mary, we just cry. Why did he take 4 days? If I say I'm the resurrection, I got to prove to you I'm the resurrection. So in their culture, the body disintegrates really fast because it's hot and dry. They believe that the spirit hovered over the body for 3 days. There is hope. After 3 days, there's no hope. That's why he took 4 days. So when he says, Lazarus, get up. Notice he didn't say get up because the whole graveyard would have got up. He said, Lazarus, get up. Lazarus got up on the 4th day. That's why that became a huge miracle that upset the leaders because they could not replicate it, so they wanted to kill him. That's just way too much stuff. See? So understanding the story helps with the understanding of the verse.
Can you elaborate more about another ethnic group which were erupted during that time, SNS?
SNS?
Yeah. Can you?
I don't recall him right now. Sorry, forgive me. SNS.
Yeah.
You got a passage? SNS.
These are one of the groups which was also came.
Oh, Essence.
Yeah.
Essence. I'm sorry. Just
Yeah.
that was just.
So that is my accent.
No, it's my accent. I'm in Kenya. Not your accent. I'm the one. No. Essence. I don't know much about that group. They weren't that influential. But I'll study it some more to make sure I give you the right. But they weren't a lot. They weren't a lot of them, and they really didn't make a massive difference in the culture. So that's why. But I remember them, but I just don't remember them being a significant group. That's why I didn't mention them. The significant groups were the Pharisees, Sadducees. Did I explain the scribes? The scribes. What are the scribes? The scribes are guys that would sit in a room with a manuscript, and every day they would write the word down with all the vowels and stuff. That's all they did. Sit in a room, take a scroll, and try to copy it because there was no copier. And that's how the scrolls were duplicated, scribes. They duplicated the scrolls. So many people depended on them to explain the scriptures because they read the scriptures every day. I actually met a scribe in Washington, and he was literally sitting on a chair, the scroll here, and he has got a pen, and he is like this. And sometimes he just does it once, and then he takes a break. They're that meticulous. That's why people respected them. All right. Now let's go to another thing here that I left out your notes. Don't shoot me. I got a plane to catch. My wife missed me. I think she does. I hope she does. My grandkids want Papa to come home. I guess they're broke right now. Because they don't have no money. They need money. That's probably why. Here's this one here. Here's another one. I wish I had time to write it down here. So here we go. Then we'll conclude. And at least you to let, after the break, we'll conclude and go to questions with what's in your notes. We'll come back to your notes. Okay? And I want you to let everybody know by 3:30, Paul Cannings finished at 3:30. Because they always get on my case for finishing late. Every time I go back to the group, they mock me. Okay? One of them is in the back, but he's my brother, so he gets away with it. That's the story. I get in the van and say, you finally made it. Okay. There's a theological way to look at the New Testament, or the Bible. A theological way to look at the Bible. The first way to look at the Bible, if you want to remember it a certain way, is that God is our Father, the fatherhood of God. the fatherhood of God. The fatherhood of God. God talks about himself being the father of a new nation. The father, the father, the father. He's always talking about this father. So he sees himself as the father because he's giving birth to a nation. He's determining when Sarah is going to have a baby. He's determining what's going to happen to the baby when Abraham goes to kill Isaac. He's going through the process. He's talking about how the 12 nations are going to be born. So guess how many kids Jacob had? 12 kids, father. So you look at the Bible, you see the fatherhood of God giving birth to a nation. So you can look at the Bible as fatherhood. Okay? And next way you can look at the Bible, one of the passages, Isaiah 63, verse 16. Isaiah 63, verse 16. God has moral standards. So next week you can look at God. He's a God that creates moral standards. He pushes moral standards. Okay? Deuteronomy chapter 28. It's a passage to look at. Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 11 through 20. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 11 through 20. Exodus chapter 20. God has moral standards. Deuteronomy 28. And then chapter 30 of Deuteronomy, 11 through 20. Exodus 20. James 2:10. God has moral standards. He's a moral God. He's going to talk about divorce. He can talk about when you can remarry. He's going to talk about homosexuality. He's going to talk about, how do you get back together if you divorce your wife. He's going to talk about all of this kind of stuff. He's a moral God. Okay? Here's the next thing you see about God in the Bible as you look at him theologically. The resurrection was the only hope of Israel. For Israel to be resurrected is the only hope for Israel. This resurrection continues from the Old Testament to the New. All right? So that's Psalm 16, 10 through 11. Psalm 16, 10 through 11. Psalm 16, 10 through 11. Isaiah 26, verse 19. Isaiah 26, verse 19. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 2. Deuteronomy chapter 12. Huh? I am going too fast. I'll slow down. It says Psalm 16, verse 10 through 11. Psalm 16, verse 10 through 11. Isaiah 26, verse 19. Isaiah 26, verse 19. Isaiah 26, verse 19. And Daniel chapter 12, verse 2. Daniel chapter 12, verse 2. Israel will be, your dead will live, your corpse will rise. You who lie in the dust, awake and shout for joy. For the dew is as the dew of the dawn, and the earth will give birth to the departed spirits. He gave them hope for a resurrection. Here's the next thing you find. The temple was the center of Jewish life. The temple was the center of Jewish life. The center. Let me tell you what I mean by center. It affected them economically, politically, and socially. It affected them economically, politically, and socially. The temple was the center of Israel's life. It was the center. Economics, political, and social existence. The next thing you find in the temple, in the Woogie Doogie, the next thing you find as you go through the theology and look at it from a theological perspective is the development of synagogues. As you come into the New Testament, it was the development of synagogues. You got that in Matthew chapter 4, verse 23. They organized worship, and it became a prototype of how the church would operate. Okay? So the next thing you see is the synagogues, which we now see transitions into the church. So you got temple and you got synagogues transition to the church. Thank you, man. Hey, could you get this to be hot? This actually worked. They could make it hot. And they got some honey.
Honey in it too?
It wouldn't hurt. But that hot water did it. I ain't cough as much after that hot water. Thank you, Pastor Robert. All right. Matthew chapter 4, verse 5. Matthew chapter 12, verse 6. The synagogue. Okay, I'm sorry, wrong verses. Matthew chapter 4, verse 23. Matthew chapter 4, verse 23. Synagogues. Chapter 6, verse 2, and the list goes on. Bunch of them. But that is a great thing to look at, because synagogues came out of Babylon, being in Babylon, and the synagogues is how the church was able to establish itself. Okay? Now, let's take a break. When you come back, we will finish up the notes, and then you could ask questions. Since it's the end of the day, I don't mind us asking whatever questions you want. Tomorrow we'll do what is theology. What does theology mean? I don't want to assume that you know what that means. Again, you may know, but I don't know that you know. What does it mean? And then it'll be a question you can ask, any kind of question you want. Okay? Tomorrow, Lord willing. Because we finish early tomorrow. And take a break, but don't break, where I got to start singing again and hurt the church.